Put your hands together for our next speaker, Carl Logan Berlin.
Hi, everyone. I am Kara. Really nice to see you today. Thanks for being here. I want to talk about how everything we do is connected. I have been a development and strategy consultant on my own for 15 years. 10 years before that, I was a fundraiser. I have worked with more than 200 nonprofits around the world, and here's what I can tell you. You guys got a lot of problems. I have the best job security on the planet, but a lot of the problems that are out there are the same, no matter the size of the organization, the mission, the scope, the amount of staffing you have. They're the same problems that show up over and over again. And they're things that are actually pretty easy to fix, but it takes a little bit of intentionality in deciding how to do that. And what I mean by that is, do you know why you're doing what you're doing? How often are you doing something because it's what we did last year? How often are you doing something because, well, that's just the way that we do it? How often are you doing something because your boss told you to and you think your boss is kind of a dummy? These things are really hard for nonprofits because breaking the cycle, but here's the thing, we only have 12 months in the year, right? There isn't extra time in there for us to try something new. So we get into these patterns and we just keep doing it. And maybe we tweak it a little bit here, maybe we tweak it a little bit there. But at the end of the day, organizations that aren't intentional with why they do things, how they do things, where they want to end up, what's the point? That's the other thing. A lot of times people do things and I'm like, was the point to have the meeting or was the point to get money? Because I think you just checked the box on have the meeting, so yay on that front, but also that was your opportunity to solicit a gift and you did not. So I want to talk a little bit today about what I see as the things that high-performing teams do, and then I want to talk about how you can apply it, and I want to talk about silo mentality and what it does and how it absolutely kind of destroys the culture of organizations, and it leaves a whole bunch of money on the table and like some dead bodies in the back. So let's talk about first intentionality of, are you a fundraiser or are you a development professional? These are not the same things. A lot of times people talk about these things like they mean the same thing, that fundraising and development are the same. I don't think that they are. I don't believe them to be the same work. I think they're aligned and I think they partner, but I think fundraising is a little more transactional, right? It's focused on revenue generation now. It's let's move fast. The strategy around it is like short term, let's go. Good examples of, political fundraising is fundraising. You're moving fast. There isn't a lot of donor cultivation in there. I know that because I've been on the back end of political donors that are like, no one ever called me again. Development takes time, right? Everybody talks about, it's relational. It is relational. You have to get to know people and understand what they're doing, and you have to be patient to figure out what the transformational gift is. I love doing this work because I think having the opportunity to talk to donors and to give them a chance to do something truly meaningful with their wealth is a gift. I think the fact you are all doing this work to raise money for worthy causes, it's amazing. But we're not always doing it as intentionally and as smart as we could be. And a lot of that is because we just don't know. Talking about intentionality, I came out of college and I knew I was going to be a fundraiser. Just kidding. No one says that. How many of you got into development or fundraising by accident? Raise your hand. It was your first job and you were like, all right, this seems cool. And then you wake up 15 years later and you're like, this is my career. That's cool. Of course it is, because development is not an undergraduate course at any university. They don't train us. They just find us, and then we do whatever the person before us did, and we try to make it better. And we do that over enough years, we get pretty good at it. But it's important to know who you are in this process, and on your team, which of these are you? Are you doing development? Are you doing fundraising? And does the rest of your team know what they're supposed to be doing too? As you look at what the pillars are, and as you look at thinking about how we do this work and how we want to do this work, and whether or not we're a fundraiser, whether or not we're a development professional, whether or not we're a little bit of both, our organization can have both. But we should be able to talk about what our goal is and where we actually want to end up. To do that, you want to talk about three big things that I keep seeing showing up at nonprofits, right? These are the things that tell me when we're in trouble or that they don't really know what's going on here other than the fact that they just keep doing it. It's they don't understand their donors. They haven't taken the time, or they don't know how to understand their donors. They don't see the purpose or the reason and why we're supposed to figure out what they want. You have to have the patience to build relationships. Patience is a hard thing for nonprofits. There is a panic, a regular panic going all the time that we're not going to get it done, we're not going to get the money, we're not going to have the money, we're not going to be able to do this, we can't fill that position. All of that is because we've asked for gifts from donors, or we've solicited people too low at the wrong time, in the wrong way, and our revenue doesn't keep moving like it should. And people are operating on their own. Everybody's doing their own thing. They're siloed, they don't collaborate, they don't talk to each other, and they don't understand that we have a full annual development strategy that we follow for the whole year. So you sliding in a secret event there in October is not helpful, right? There's a lot of part of this that gets really frustrating as fundraisers, and the ability to be able to multitask, bless you all, because this job, raising money, is whack-a-mole every day. It doesn't matter what you had on your to-do list, because you're dealing with real life people and real life donors, and they're calling and they're asking for things and they want things all the time. So you constantly have to be reactive. But the most successful people are proactive. They're anticipating the needs and they're figuring out what works, what doesn't, and they're constantly subtracting. Every time I sit down with my clients, I'm like, let's look at your communication calendar. Oh, you don't have one? Okay, that's a whole different story. But they usually don't have one. So then we make it, how often are you talking to your donors? It used to be the rule was 10 or 11 times a year, right? Well, that was before we had email, before the internet was around, before you texted people, all of these things. So you've now got your 10 or 11 regular touch points and then like 32 other touch points a year. For major donors, that's too much for them. They tap out, they're not interested. But you have to be thinking about how to do this and talking to each other about how we're communicating with this calendar aligned with our events, with our appeals, with our board meetings, with our vacations, with our largest foundation proposal due dates, and making sure that everything is holistic. And you've got to integrate it. If you don't, you will make mistakes and you will look like you don't know what you're doing to your donors. So let's talk about understanding your donors. Someone said this once early in my career. I loved it, the ABCs of fundraising. It was you have to have ability to give, belief in the work and the cause or something similar, and a connection to someone in your organization. If you don't have all three of these, they're not a viable prospect. Like, you can go whale hunting if you want. I love whale hunting, but it's not a way to build a budget, right? You're not gonna feel secure if you're like, all we need is for, Mark Zuckerberg to write us a check. And I'm like, yeah, good idea. You should spend a lot of time on that. And it's funny because all of my clients, the amount of time people say to me, you know who should give to us? And I'm like, oh God. I'm like, who? And it's almost always Alicia Keys or John Legend. Like, almost every time. I'm like, cool. Do you know Alicia Keys? Because I don't think anybody here knows Alicia Keys. I agree. She should give to you, but let's not spend a lot of time on the Alicia Keys strategy, right? Like, let's go deeper with our current donor base first. So when you think about finding donors and you think about where to spend time, for one, go deeper with your current donor base before you try to pick up new people. Like, that's where the majority of the money is coming from less than 20% of your donors. So make sure you're exhausting all of those conversations first. And then you can think about how to grow that pool. I will say this all the time, hope is not a strategy. Like, if you are starting any sentence when we're talking about goal setting with, well, we hope, I'm like, nope, not gonna get you there. So think about your donors, think about who's actually a real donor, and then think about why they give. I'm gonna do this one really fast because you know it, but there's three pots of private money, really. Like when we're talking about fundraising and meeting with people. Corporate partners, it's very much about like, what can you guys do for us? It's transactional, it's fast, you have to be aligned with their foundation, you have to Understand that you got to give them something. So whether it's marketing or branding or social media or engagement opportunities for their employees, it has to be a match for them from that standpoint. And that's usually because that money is coming from the marketing budget and not from the philanthropy budget. There are 3 pots of corporate money that you can go after. You can go after all 3 of them at the same time. But you do need to know what you're doing and be intentional in that outreach. There's the community relations, social responsibility money. There's the corporate foundation, and then there's the secret C-suite money, the partner money. Those are the people that when you have an event and you say, will you take a table at our gala? And they say, oh, we don't fund events. And you're like, that's weird because you have a table at every event in the city. It's from that pot of money. We have to understand what they want. When we sit down with the company, we've got to know what else do they fund, what do they care about, and how do they partner with people. So that's the pitch we go into. It doesn't matter how much we like our corporate program officer. It doesn't matter if we like the person that runs the foundation. They don't have any money. They're the person that figures this out for us, right? We have to be a match on the company side, not on the person side. On the foundation side, you know, they're handsy. They're a little handsy, the foundations. They want a lot of information. They want big picture, then they want the short pathway to get there, right? They want to know how you're going to do everything, measurement, results, metrics. They can be super annoying with all of their questions. Flip side, their questions are very good. If you can't answer their questions, there's probably something wrong with the organization, the way you're doing things. You should be able to answer those questions. It should be okay for them to ask you those questions. They want to give you $200,000. It's okay for them to ask, does anyone go to the program? Like, these are things that are also okay, but we have to understand from where they're standing from. They've got so many people asking for money. If they are going to choose to give it to you, they want to make sure it's a good investment. And if you keep doing the right thing, that gift is renewable. It's okay. And then there's individuals who are my very favorite. I love individuals because they're real regular people that have real regular problems and issues, but they're also the only people out of these 3 that give you their own money. Everyone else you talk to is giving you someone else's money. Individuals will bail you out when there is a downturn in the market, when there is a catastrophic event, when there is, I don't know, a pandemic. They're the people that you go to and say, can you please just stay the same? Or can we just count on you to come back this year? And they have the ability to say yes or no. And that's why the time spent with them is so important. Most individuals, all they want to understand is what is the need, how do you address the need, and how can they be a part of it? That's their capacity. Don't get into all the ways you do all the things. They can't do it. They're not listening. I don't blame them. This isn't their job. I don't listen when they talk to me about the stock market. I nod, and I pretend like I know what they're talking about. I'm like, I'm more of a thumbs up, thumbs down on the economy type gal. But you've got to know what they need, and you've got to cater to that. If you understand what all these people need before you go to the meeting, and that means that you've worked with your team, you've worked with prospect research, you've done your own search, and you've done your own preparation, you're ready to find out what you should be asking. But you can't ask for things. You can't ask for a gift. You can't ask for them to do things for you without having some really important information. So I call these things the essential questions, trademark pending. First, why did they take this meeting? Why are they considering giving to us, right? What are their motivations? Why do they give? What do they give to? What matters to them? Have they had good experiences with other nonprofits? Which ones? What'd they like? What didn't work? Have they, how does that feel to them? How do they give? I mean, I always make it very clinical when I'm talking to donors. I say, listen, for me to be able to help and to be supportive and to do this with you, I have to know, just a few things. How do you make decisions about where you give, right? Who else makes that? Who needs to be in the conversation? Who should we be including? What time of year do you give? Do you have an average gift amount that you think about? And if they start to get kind of weird, because I'm like, it's not supposed to be a guessing game. I'm not supposed to send it and then you're like, wrong, right? Like, it's much better for me to do the work on the back end. I'll say to them, the last thing I want to do is send you a proposal for something that's wrong or ask you for something that is completely outlandish. So, what do you think? This is where silence is really helpful. So when you say, well, would you, as you're thinking about your gift, would you consider a 6-figure gift this year? And then you just smile. And you wait for them to answer. Because they will. They will eventually answer. But they're adults. They have to answer. Like, it's not your job to be like, or 5 figures, or nothing, whatever you want to do. Love you, thanks for the coffee, right? Like, you've got to find out some information here if you're going to do the job. So, you know, we call this in fundraising, you walk towards the barking dog, which is, you know, it's okay, it's nervous and kind of weird and kind of awkward. I still got to find this stuff out, because at the end of the day, I serve the mission. I'm not asking you for a loan. I'm asking you to find out what the heck is going on here. So once we know these things too, we're like, you know, tell us how you got here. You know, I don't even know, you've been a donor for 6 years. I don't even know how you first got to us. What was it about us that was interesting to you? What do you care about? You know, your last gift, you've given the same amount to the event every year. Do you do that because you really like the event, or do you like being a part of something? You know, do you believe the gifts make a difference? You know, are we communicating that to you? You know, and what do you want? What do you want to do here? How engaged do you want to be? How involved do you want to be? Do you want to, you know, do you serve on any boards? Do you volunteer? What programs do you like? You have a real conversation with them. And please don't do these questions in this order. Do them in the order of a natural human person, communicating with another human person. And you'll find out all this information, and then you know a little bit more about what you're doing. Once you understand and are, you know, donors' intentions, you can be intentional with how you treat them. So thinking about building relationships, I don't know who came up with the phrase moves management, because it kind of means nothing, but everybody uses it. They're like, well, our moves management, and I'm like, oh geez. But it's the life cycle of a donor, right? This is how it works. It should be cyclical, right? When you have a donor, you have a prospect, you do discovery, you figure out who are they, what do they like, what do they care about, where else have they given, how long have they given to us, how long have they given to other organizations, what amount, you do all the work to figure out, all right, I think I know who this person is a little bit and I can figure it out. And then you start building the relationship with them. You talk to them. You don't tell them all the things you learned about them. You ask them leading questions, so they tell you all the things you learned about them. You make sure that, like, you connect with them, you figure out who they are. A lot of this is wealth assessment, which, you know, sounds a little mercenary, but you're trying to figure out when they say to you, oh, yeah, our kids go to this private school and we live here and this is where we went on our spring break and my spouse is on the board of this and all these things. Pretty soon you start to figure out, right, their $250 gift was not the gift. That was the wrong gift, right? So the more you get to know them, the more you also can think about what the right gift amount is for them. And then once you know everything about them, not everything, but enough, right? You brief them. You say, these are all the ways we partner. These are all the ways we raise money. Every year there's an annual appeal. Every year there's a Giving Tuesday. Don't get me started on Giving Tuesday. Every year there's, you know, a gala, there's a golf outing, there's a this. Every year you're going to hear from us in these ways. What's interesting to you? What do you like? What of those things would you want to do? Would you want to serve on a leadership council? Would you want to serve on a board? Would you want to serve on an event? And by the time you make the ask, and with all those things, you use dollar amounts, you know, to be an honoree, we ask people to secure, you know, $500,000 a year. To be on the host committee, we ask you to be a 25K sponsor. You use all the numbers, so as you talk to them, you can watch how they respond. You can watch what they lean into, you can watch what they don't, and then by the time you ask them for something, you are asking them for the right amount, at the right time, for the right thing. You're not just asking and then being like, God, I hope that's close, right? You should know the answer. And just as a side note, if they say yes right away, you ask for too little. That's the worst thing. It's worse for me to have someone say they can't do a gift than for them to be like, sure. And I'm like, no. I'm like, this year. That was the first half of the gift. The second ask is now. And then you steward them. Then you steward them really well. You stay in front of them. You stay connected. You make sure you don't just talk to them when you want something. Oh, side note, I just worked with a client that if any of you do planned giving, please don't have somebody tell you that they've got a bequest for you or they put you in their will or whatever, and then not talk to them anymore. This happens all the time. People are like, oh no, we're in their will, and it's like they've already died, right? You've got to stay in front of people. You have to steward people. I know a lot of donors that have decreased gifts to charities because they were like, I never heard from them the last 5 years. So remember that, like, people are alive as long as they're alive, friends. Let's make sure that we steward them, because if you steward them well, Donors at any level for anything, you take them through, before you know it, you're back to the discovery. And that's how it should work. We should be working with people to get them to be annual donors no matter the gift, so that they are constantly choosing us again. They are recommitting to us every year in their choice. That's why we try not to do multi-year gifts, right? I don't want to lock somebody out of these conversations for 3 years. That doesn't help me. Like if someone insists on a multi-year, I try to get it to be 2, maybe 3. Anything more than that, you're locking yourself out of an easy 6, 7 figure. All right, so before you do all of this, this is a great little exercise. Take a picture of this, although maybe you get all of these afterwards. I hope you do. Be able to answer these things before you talk to any donors, or before you're thinking about soliciting or connecting or emailing or whatever you're doing with donors. Can you answer the story of the organization? Can you answer what's the need? How do we address the need? What makes us special? What makes us interesting? What's our value add? Could you say that easily in a way that doesn't make people want to walk away from you at a cocktail party, right? What's your story of self? Like, if you want to know donors, you got to know yourself. Why am I here? What am I doing? Why do I care about this place? What's the point of this, right? It's a lot easier to talk about the work if you know why you're there. And then you got to know the story of us, right? So now I can tell you why this place is special. Now I can tell you why it's special to me and why I'm passionate about it. Let me tell you why right now is the time to be part of what we're doing. Let me tell you why right now is where all the special sauce is, right? And this is a great exercise to do with your boards, at board meetings. It's a great exercise to do with your teams. To be like, let's sit around and let's talk about it, let's share it out. Because if you can't talk about why you're doing this work with intentionality, and that you meant to be here, and you mean to do this, it's real hard to do it to anybody else. So, you know, when you think about doing that, you think about it across all the channels, whether it's digital fundraising or major gift fundraising, whatever it is, you're personalizing all of this. You're customizing everything. You're thinking about real people and deciding what works for them. When I talk to donors, I don't ask for anything. I don't go into a meeting with a pitch. The donor should be talking at least 80% of the meeting. I don't walk in and try to sell them something ever. I just talk to them, and through the course of the conversation, they tell me what they want to be sold. And then I just talk about those parts of our work that are aligned with their interests and what they care about. And that's the key to like really making this work. And when you think about engaging, you think about customizing emails, you think about the notes and invitations and recognition and check-ins and all of that stuff. All of that should be done intentionally in a way where you know the donor and you're building the relationship and it all plays together. You know, a good example are annual appeals, right? When you think about them, you know you segment the list, right? You should segment the list. The amount of my clients that are like, we just send it to everyone. And I'm like, great, you should send it to everyone. But for anyone that makes a year-end gift of $250 or more, you should be pulling them out. Their ask should be targeted. Last year you gave X, this year will you give Y? They should get a phone call the day the year-end appeal drops that says, hey, heads up, our year-end appeal is dropping. Like, hope you're having a great time, happy holidays. They should get a phone call after it drops, that said, or after you get the gift, that says, thank you, I just want to let you know we got it. It means so much. All of these touch points that are customized for this one little group will double your year-end money. It's not rocket science, right? It's telling them, hey, don't throw away the letter or don't delete the email. Remember, you give to us. And then, hey, guess what you gave last year? Because they usually don't know. And would you think about doing this? All of these things really work, but you have to segment and you have to talk to each other. The people that do the direct mail, the people that do the appeals, have to talk to the people that are doing the major gift and the principal gift work and say, let's talk about these donors. What do we do with them? And it's really a funny thing because every year people are like, the year-end appeal, it just kind of snuck up on us. And I'm like, it's the end of the year. It comes did Thanksgiving also surprise you? Like, what do you mean it snuck up on you? You had the whole year to plan for it. Like, intentionality, planning, strategy, having it all tied together. Collaboration's key. Let's try silo mentality. Have you guys heard this expression, silo mentality? I love it because it's very sad. I'm sure you've all experienced it. So in most development and communication shops, there are little fiefdoms. There are little groups. Raise your hand if you have any of this in where you work. There are people that own little pieces of it, and they're like, this is what we do. Like, we don't do that, we do this. And I'm like, what? We all have the same goal. And you see it happen. You see it a lot in places where bonuses are tied to revenue. I worked at a place early in my career that people would fight to get there early to open the mail so that they could take credit for the gifts, that it was like, this is a major gift, not an event gift, because their bonuses were tied to their revenue streams. So nonprofits, this stuff happens at the very top, right? Why do people have silos? Why does it start at the top? I mean, at the end of the day, people are badly behaved because of one of two things. They're either afraid of things, or they're wildly insecure. I find at nonprofits, there's a lot of both, because they're afraid we won't raise the money, and we're afraid the board will be mad, and we're afraid this won't work, so we're just gonna do things here and I'm gonna control. Or I have no idea how to do this job, and no one really trained me, and I used to be an amazing social worker, and now I run a $3 million organization, and I'm not totally sure how to do that, and so I'm gonna do things this way and control. And what happens is it all filters down until people aren't talking and they aren't sharing. There's lack of accountability because no one's talking about the goals together. You miss all sorts of deadlines. Things are really slow. Getting decisions made are very slow when they're siloed. There's an us versus them mentality. You know, a lot of places, you know, the events team is like always kind of mad at the Marcom team, and the major gift team isn't talking to the foundation team. There's always something that has to do with people just feeling insecure and underappreciated. And you have to have it work, or you're leaving all this money on the table, and your donors, you know, they see it. You make mistakes when you don't talk to each other. When the events people are following up with one of your largest donors and saying, are you coming to the event? And the person that manages that relationship is like, I have a meeting with them tomorrow. Now it looks weird that you called them and we didn't talk about it, and the gift actually already came in, but gift processing didn't tell us, so no one has thanked the donor. All of these things, they're not good. They're not good, and they cost you money. They cost you money, and they hurt your morale, right? Like, you're not an island. Teams that work in isolation, they miss opportunities. Like, if you are sharing out what happens with your donors across everybody at an all-team meeting that you have once a week where you give the highlights of what happened, somebody there will be able to be like, oh, you know what we could do? I could do a customized mailing for them. I could pull, you know, research could be like, I could pull something about that he was so interested in, about disinformation. I could pull an article for you to send to him. All of these things that make it so much more enjoyable to be a donor. But it requires that you talk to each other, and that there's a pattern of communication that is aimed at, we all have the same goal. We are all trying to get to the same place, and we are all trying to do really good work in the world. But why can't we just do it together and celebrate each other in the process? So the best strategies when you have this in place, one, unified vision. What are we all trying to do? What's the goal? What's the fundraising goal this year? For every event, what's the revenue goal? What's the goal for our donor experience? What's the goal for how we do this? Tie it together. This is how you're gonna play a part in this. This is how you'll play a part, you'll play a part. Accountability, tie the accountability back to it. And then make sure it's easy for people to give feedback. To be like, listen, that didn't work. Like, we tried to do that, or I know that we wanted to do this special thing or this special mailing, and we tried it, and the numbers, nobody opened it. It didn't work. So we know it didn't work, so all right, no big deal. Not, it didn't work because you guys are the worst, right? It didn't work. Sometimes it just doesn't work. We have to keep innovating in what we're doing, and we have to keep trying, right? And we have to have the freedom to feel like it's okay to take some risks. Sometimes it just doesn't work. That's okay. We still learn stuff from it, and then you adjust and you do it differently next time. But you have to have a culture where you can talk about it. And I think talking about it free form is great. I also think having an audience following anything you do, anything you're trying to do, where you sit down and you say, all right, these are the 5 big questions we ask every time. What worked? What didn't? What would we do differently next time? How do we do this? And so you teach people how to communicate with transparency, with respect, without fear, and then you celebrate the process of feedback. As many ways you can get the different teams to connect, as many ways as you can do cross-team collaboration, or the two of us are going to manage this event, or the two of us are going to lead this lunch conversation or whatever, the better it is. And then, the last thing is keep everybody focused on the big picture, right? We're trying to do X to help Y. That's what everybody here is here for the right reasons and doing the best they can. And where we fall, we can lift each other up and train. And then you celebrate all of it. But when you think about effective team collaboration, even one gift goes through multiple layers of the same team. The gift officer gets the credit for they closed a gift for $50,000, and isn't that amazing? Well, somebody helped with the briefing and the research, somebody did all the background, somebody pulled their giving history, somebody made sure program for the site visit knew what to do and what to talk about and practice it and who should be there. The CEO knew what their talking points were. They were ready to send the thank you email. They had it going out, and the board member that brought them in knew it was happening, knew what happened afterwards, and made the phone call. That has to happen every time with every donor, and there are systems and operations that you can put in place to make that work. But if you don't have it, you just leave money on the table, and people give you, I promise you, the least possible amount they think they can get away with if you don't do this. Every time. So listen, development magic happens when teams trust and empower each other. Trust takes time, but it also takes just a little bit of effort. You don't just get to trust your coworkers. You should. It'd be lovely. It's not how people work. So you have to spend the time to do it. When there's transparency and that's prioritized and it's valued, not radical transparency. There's the whole radical transparency theme. I'm one step below that. Sometimes I think the radical transparency is like the rip your face off transparency. I don't necessarily think we need to do that, but I think we can be one level below that, and it's really helpful. That you follow through and follow up, not just with donors, not just externally, but with each other. That you keep talking to each other, that if you're going to be late, you let them know. If you're not going to get it done, you let them know. If you owe them something, if you need something, you let them know. That you share information, and that you celebrate each other regularly. Because at the end of the day, this is supposed to be a lot of fun. There are lots of jobs that you could do a million different jobs. This one actually, is a force for good in the world. So let's celebrate the fact that we do it every day. And that is it, so go make some magic.